Okay, guys, get this all situated while everyone is joining. Let me know if the volume is good, all that. Okay, there we go. I will have a members live maybe on the way to get my Walmart pickup in just a few minutes after we're done with this. So we'll see if I can get to that. Hey, Sarah. So we'll see if I can get to that as soon as the show is done. Things have been a little crazy lately, always, right? And hi, Honor in the Apron. I don't recognize your name. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the live today. So, I am going to talk today about reaping what you sow, enjoying your older children, basically, or enjoying your adult children. Hey, Kaylin, my channel is geared towards young moms. So, to all you young moms out there with lots of littles, I want to give you hope today. Hope to keep going when it's tough and to put in all the work with your littles because it will eventually pay off. I well remember the days with littles. It was a fight for survival. I have gone so many years on barely any sleep. I have barely spoken to my husband some days, with the exception of tag, you're it, so I could go get groceries or a coffee or whatever just to preserve my sanity. I've gotten up at 5 a.m. to go work out just so I could have some time by myself. I have spent long days raising the kids so my husband could work two jobs to support our family and pay the bills. I have had multiple children in difficult years of life. When I say that, I mean I've had a lot that were toddlers all at once. I've had some that were in the younger years of school all at once. Very difficult, time consuming years of their lives. Years where I had to fight to keep them from killing themselves. I mean, dying from falling off the counter or something. And if I wasn't trying to keep them alive, I was dealing with behavioral issues that were coming up. I see you, I hear you, I feel you, and I'm here to tell you it's worth it. Being a mom is not easy, and being a good mom is harder yet. You literally pour your life and soul into raising productive members of society, and we have to say no quite often to our own desires and wants, especially when we have lots of littles. As they get older, though, you can branch off and start doing your own things. Let's talk about some ways you're going to reap what you have sown as your kids get older. If you just hang in there, get through the hard days, get through the hard years, keep that vision in your head of the light at the end of the tunnel, you can do this. So, yes, Sarah, I had to just, oh, hey, Christine. Okay. So that's your screen name. I had to make a phone call earlier and I basically shooed the kids out of my room, locked it, and said, I'm going to be on the phone. So, and mine aren't quite as young as yours. So I didn't think that they were going to harm themselves in the 5 minutes it took me to make the phone call, right? But let's talk about reaping what you've sown, putting in the hard work when it comes to teaching them how to work. So this is a big one when it comes to raising kids. You want to raise hard workers because as they get older, they're definitely going to start helping you around the home, even for just being productive members of society. It's really hard to live in today's economy. It's really hard to live with inflation and the cost of living. Homes are on the rise, rent is on the rise, mortgage is on the rise, and it takes a lot of hard work to make ends meet. Because of this, it's going to have to start when they're younger, teaching them how to work hard. And one of the first things that you can do, I think about from the age from 0 to 5, you don't want to have as far as like character building, teaching them to work, not being lazy. It doesn't really apply to 0 to 5 year olds because 0 to 5 year old kids are just kind of curious by nature. They're not usually ones to sit around unless you have a little couch potato. It's kind of rare for me. Even when my babies, I call them babies, but 5 and 3 year old, even when I sit them down to watch a movie, Um, it's very like 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. They don't usually sit down and watch an entire movie from start to finish. That's just my kids. My kids are very energetic. They're curious. They like to be outside. They like to be running around. They like to jump on the trampoline. So I don't feel as if laziness is an issue. At this age, what I try to do from 0 to 5 is I try to make it fun. Come help mom, Um, when was it? Saturday. Kelly and Hannah decided that they were going to clean the house. And she said to make Abby, Lana, and Chloe happy. Kelly told me, or no, Hannah told me that. And it's funny that it wasn't to make you happy because I'm not, since I have a lot more kids, my expectations have been lowered greatly when it comes to the house and the housework. I'm pretty happy with cleaning the kitchen once a day, keeping it picked up, etc. My older girls are the ones that get a little uptight when things are really, really messy. And so they kind of try to stay on top of it. But Hannah told me that her and Kelly, and they did such a good job for a 3 and a 5-year-old. I mean, they knew the exact routine what we do. So last night it was a long day after church, and I was feeling it, and I was kind of laying on the couch, and Hannah or my husband came in and he said, "Girls, start picking up." It was only the babies at home. And so they started picking up, and Hannah knew the routine. Like she picked up the entire living room, and then she's like, "I gonna vacuum it now," and she got the vacuum out and vacuumed it. So they know that like we do the pickup, then we do the vacuum. They know the kind of the order of things that we do it in. A lot of that is just from observing. So obviously, when it comes to having little 0 to 5, I like to just kind of keep them with me as I'm doing things, and I know it's a lot more work. Sometimes they get underfoot and different things like that, but it will pay off eventually. Eventually, they're going to pick up on exactly the routine that you're doing and what you're doing. And they're going to start mimicking. They're going to try to, act like you. And so, my biggest suggestion from 0 to 5 is just kind of keep the kids with you as you're doing things. And we're going to talk a little bit later about just the importance of communication and talking as you're doing your tasks. And some studies that Abby has been doing at her daycare kind of back up what I'm going to say. I know this just from experience and from having 8 kids, but she's actually been doing science. She has to do scientific studies. She has to study them and learn about like developmental behaviors and different things like that working in the daycare. So she's got to stay like on top of all this stuff. And so she does a lot of online classes, and it's very interesting what she's learned that she already technically knew from being in a big family, but she's like, I can't believe how much this like backs up things that you've always said. So but teaching them to work, I consider by the time when they start school, we take it very seriously. So I kind of tell my kids when it comes to schoolwork, like, this is the only real work that you have to do as a kid. And this is it. And this is working your brain. This is teaching you self discipline. This is teaching you to just faithfulness and doing what you're supposed to do every day in and day out. So from 0 to 5, though, it's pretty much just modeling for them, keeping them with you as you do chores, different things like that. Now, when my girls get to be about 8, 9, 10, that's kind of when I start actually teaching them how to cook. When I say teaching them, they've been with me, they've been observing up to that time, but this is when I actually let them attempt to start cooking on their own. And obviously, even at the beginning, that's going to be a little bit more difficult because you will constantly be being asked questions. And sometimes it's almost just easier to do things yourself, but refrain from doing it because it's good for them to learn these skills. So, boys need to learn yard work and skills from dad. And definitely, from the time my kids could hold a rake, no, I take that back. From the time my kids could toddle around the yard, my husband, when he would be home doing yard work, he would have them following him around picking up sticks. They started out by picking up sticks. Um, so I'm talking like a 2-year old, and then they're outside. Kids love being outside. It's good for them. So he would have them pick up sticks. He has Kelly and Hannah pick up sticks. And then he goes into more and more advanced chores. Now, when I left, I had my 14-year-old and my 10-year-old out in the barn cleaning out the chicken coop. Um, just us having chickens has really helped with Allie and Lana, those are kind of their chores that they do. And it's instilled a sense of ownership and responsibility. And it's easier after you've raised 3 or 4 kids to kind of let things start sliding. And since the older 4 are doing so much and they're helping out so much around the house and they're doing so much, you kind of the middle ones and the babies kind of start getting lost in the shuffle. So I think it's really good that oh, hi little 3-month-old. I think it's really good for kids to have some sort of responsibility that they can kind of own and take ownership for. So, and that's, cleaning out the coop is not easy. I work up a sweat doing it. You're literally shoveling up chicken stuff and putting it into a wheelbarrow or bucket and then taking it to the burn pile. So it's a lot of work, but it's good for them to do. And then just even the sense of pride and accomplishment that they have when they're done with that. Now, for bigger chores like this, I do pay my kids. It's not very much. It's like $5, at the most $10, but I will pay them some for extra chores that are take longer. They take a few hours. They're hard work physically. I will pay them. Now, them gathering the eggs, feeding and watering the chickens every day, that is not something I pay them for. That's just they do chicken chores is what we call them. They do the garbages as well. So Abby and Chloe kind of are cooking, cleaning, doing stuff around the house. The younger one needed something. So I'm really glad we got chickens for that alone. Like I get to enjoy them and they do most of the work most of the time, but it's teaching them responsibility and things. So when it comes to homeschooling, yes, choose which curriculum works for you, but do school. Most of you know I am not a fan of unschooling. I do believe in teaching them, especially the fundamentals. So that would be reading, writing, arithmetic for sure. They need to learn those. Um, whatever curriculum then you choose, that's totally fine. Um, but it has to be something that they're going to do. Teaching to read probably is the hardest thing when it comes to homeschooling for me personally. Teaching to read, it's exhausting mentally when you're sitting there. No, sound it out. K, a, t. And then they'll say k, a, t. Okay, now can you put them together? K, at, k, at, k, at. Over and over and over and over again. It's tough. But having a good reader is very, very imperative. And the thing that has helped me the most when it comes to teaching my kids to read is I don't spend that much time every day, maybe at the max 2 hours. And this is when we would do their songs every day. We would do their worksheets. We would go through their stories when it came to the letter or the sound that they were doing. And then they would do their workbooks, for the ones I taught ACE to, it was only word building and arithmetic. Now, Abeka is a little bit more intensive, but for Abeka, I'm even more hands off. They have a teacher that's teaching them Abeka videos. So I'm going to try to go Abeka video with my 2 youngers and try to get them all the way through it from start to finish. I'm at a point in my life where I think I could because of, extra income and not having as many in school. So that's my goal with them. And Kelly will start this fall. But teaching them to read is so imperative because readers are leaders, and I'm a reader. And there's so much wealth in just being a good reader, being able to express yourself through the written word. I know that's very near and dear to my heart. So obviously, it's why it's priority for me. But get them into an established routine with homeschooling. I tell my kids school is the only work they'll ever do. So it will be done every day unless, there's things that come up. That is the beauty of homeschooling. It is flexible, but you can take that too far too. It's about finding a balance. You can go too far to where we're just taking off for everything. So you have to be really careful with that line. So how do we reap what we sow as they get older? What about training in general? And training is one of these things, it can be exhausting for little kids, especially. Sometimes it feels like from the time they wake up to the time they go to sleep, you just have a bad day, right? And they're biting their sister, or they're screaming, or they're crying, or they're kicking someone, or they're throwing toys, or whatever it is. So It will pay off though, because you do need to teach little kids are born, babies are born, completely a blank slate, right? And so much happens in those first 0 to 5 years. That is one of the most important times of a child's life. And during that time, you have to teach them, you have to train them to be the type of person. You have to exhibit for them also, but this is more so when they're older. When they're younger, they pretty much have to be told. Um, you need to teach them self control. You need to teach them to be kind. It does not come naturally. Too many of them. Now, I will say, every single one of my kids has a different personality. And really, from 0 to 5, I see those personalities kind of emerge. And there's pluses and cons to these different type of personalities. Okay, so I'm going to try to see who I can use as an example. Um, some of my kids tend to be a little more compassionate and sensitive than some of my other kids. And then some of my kids that aren't as sensitive or compassionate, though, they turn out to be some of my leaders, some of the ones that don't go along with peer pressure. They're good leaders, they're resolute in what they believe. Um, I don't know. Every kid has a different personality, but I do see it kind of coming out from 0 to 5. You can kind of tell what their personality is. Some kids are more prone to sadness, where some kids are more prone to just being happy by nature. And it is definitely a personality thing that I can see coming out. Um, Abigail was one of my most from 0 to 5. I know part of it was because she had lots of chronic ear infections. And once we put tubes in her ears and that resolved, she became a lot happier. But she's my one that cried the most from the time she was born. And she is still one of my ones that cries the most, even being older. So it just, her sensitive nature was there even as a baby. But some of your kids, you're going to have to kind of temper them down a little bit, teach them self control when it comes to controlling their emotions and controlling their anger. Some kids, you're going to have to push them a little bit. Maybe they're more lazy or apathetic. They don't have the quick temper, but they're more prone to being lazy. So every kid is different, and every kid is, you're going to have to just, you as the mom, you know them the best, right? You know them the best. And oftentimes, it's hard when God kind of uses this as lessons in our own life, how he must feel sometimes, right? Because sometimes I have to get after my kids for acting in ways I know I act, or having the same type of personality that I have. Sometimes I know I have to get after Allie because of something she said, but it's so hilarious because it sounds exactly like something I would say. And I understand her thought process, because Allie is like Cassandra on steroids. Basically, she's like Cassandra before Cassandra learned how to temper her personality. Now they call it different things like masking, which I don't think so much it's masking, because the Bible does tell us that we need to learn and put on these things in our life. If it We have to put it on because sometimes it doesn't come naturally to us. So it's not a matter of putting on a mask. It's a matter of not giving into the flesh when it comes to these things, putting on the spirit, allowing the spirit to guide us rather than our flesh, which wants to lash out or, be upset or whatever it is. So, but yeah, you have to, if you teach them self control, kindness, teach them how to show grace to others, how to forgive others, teach them all the fruits of the spirit: love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, meekness, faith, temperance. Teach them to be honest, teach them obedience. Those things are all going to pay off. And yes, it takes work. And yes, it takes a lot of talking and a lot of explaining. And training children, please get this. Okay. Training children is not raising little soldiers in a boot camp. Okay. It's not just having a list of offenses and then cracking down every time one of them breaks the list. No, training children is probably 30% correction with 70% explaining the correction. It's really, and that's how you get to the heart of things. I've seen kids that have been raised in a military style home, like a boot camp, and they can't get out of that house quick enough because living at home is a miserable place. Um, and the things that their parents were trying to instill in them, or the things that they were getting punished for, they never quite got it in their hearts. And I think part of this goes back to just never explaining why, never telling them this is why we do what we do, never showing them from God's word, this is why we don't lie. And this is why we're honest with people. And this is why we have to have gentleness and meekness and put up with people, So, um, definitely a lot of talking, communicating when raising kids. And I feel like this element is missing a lot from homes. And oftentimes when it's missing and it's just do as I say, you're getting beat if you don't do this, blah, blah, blah. That's when you produce bitter, angry children who want to flee as soon as they turn 18 because it stinks living at their house. So, um, really get to the heart of the matter. And I don't care that Kelly is only 5 and Hannah's only 3. I explain to them exactly why we don't act that way and exactly why we do things this way. I definitely correct if I need to, but it's a lot of talking. And that brings me to my next point, talk to them. And the studies that Abby's been doing have kind of back up this point. There's a lot from 0 to 5, it's the most imperative age. And if you look back at cases of abuse with children and you start researching them, which it's kind of fascinating to me, this whole subject, there have been studies where the child was so abused, they were tied to a chair, left in a dark room, never interacted with, never spoken. When they were finally rescued out of that, they were past the age 10, 11, 12. They were so far gone, they never learned to speak. They never learned to say full sentences. They maybe just did 1 or 2 words at a time. They weren't socially aware. They would do really odd, bizarre behaviors in public. And that 0 to 5 window is so big. So during that 0 to 5 window, you really need to immerse yourself with your kids. From the time my kids were nursing, I was talking to them as I'd be looking down at them and, oh, you're just so beautiful. Mommy loves you so much. You really have to interact with your kids. There's also been studies done, I believe by the Nazis, where they put babies completely alone. They only provided their food needs and they would change their diaper, did not hold them, did not cuddle them, did not talk to them. And those babies ended up dying because they need that. Babies need that from their moms. So the studies that she's been doing show just how important, like here's a rule at their daycare for one. As staff, when they feed the kids lunch, they are not allowed to just like leave them alone to eat and like mingle with other staff, right? So when they feed the kids, they have to sit there and interact with them as the kids are eating. And that's one of the important steps to developmental um, intellect is that they're talking with them, they're interacting with them while they're eating. So she said that's one of the rules that they have at their daycare, and this is based off of studies that they've done. So, talking to kids, it seems so trivial. Sometimes it takes work. Sometimes we just want to be in the van and the kids just be quiet. Just let me drive, let me veg out, whatever. Let me be alone in my own thoughts. But it's so imperative that we talk to kids because talking helps their cognitive skills, it helps their developmental brain skills, it helps their language skills. It teaches them the importance of communicating with mom and dad. I want to keep that open line of communication. I want to know what's going on in my kids' lives, even my one that's married, my adult kids. I want to know. So I'm always talking. I'm always trying to get information out of them. I'm always, keeping that open. Even with my 3 and 5 year old, some of the funniest conversations we've ever had have been in the van as we're driving down the road. you know, and I do not believe children should be seen and not heard. I think that's stupid and I think it's antiquated and I think it's why so many boomer kids and so many kids before them had such horrible relationships with their mom and dad. So I don't believe that you should come to the dinner table and the kids just be quiet while mom and dad, there's a time and place for everything. Put them to bed at 7 and then you've got a good 2, 3 hours to talk to each other. But when kids are up, they need to be interacted with. You need to talk to them. Teaches them that they can come to you with anything. Um, Hey, you just joined the fan club. Welcome. So, yes. Hey, Celine. So, so yes, you have to talk to them. And I'm a talker. I'm a talker, Sarah. So this has never really come hard for me because we just talk all the time. And there is a lot of noise and it is hard. Sometimes you just want peace and quiet. But I've known of families in my past and where we were letting our kids run around, be wild, be free, be McMurtry children. They would make their kids sit like little robots, like sit there, not move. One of the biggest reasons was because they didn't want their clothes to get dirty. Okay. Um, Coincidentally, these were families that would only have one kid, two kids, three kids at the most, right? So they would make them sit there and they were believers in like, I'm sitting them down to eat. They're going to eat. They're not going to talk. They would not talk to them when they ate. They just finish your food and, that was it. Well, I've seen the way my kids are turning out, and then I've seen the way people do opposite of me, and I'll take the way my kids are turning out. Obviously, we're a little bit biased when it comes to our own children. I understand. But first of all, it took them, they had developmental delays when it came to speech. They did not speak near as quickly as my kids. They did not communicate as well as my kids. They weren't speaking in full sentences. You couldn't really understand what they were saying. And I think it was just from being told to sit down and be quiet and don't move. And we're not in this to raise robots, guys. Okay. We're in this to raise, first of all, children that love the Lord. Second of all, children that love us. And third of all, people that we're going to have relationships with for the rest of our lives. So, because of this, we have to be fully there as we're raising them. We have to be there for them. We have to be talking to them. We have to be communicating with them. And it seems really weird that I have to say this, but Abby said it's very, very common. The parents really don't talk to their kids. And that seems weird coming. That's weird for me to think about as a talker and as someone who's always just talk, 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 talk to my kids. But she said that sometimes with parenting classes, they literally have to teach parents how to talk to their kids. So it is something that's becoming more rare, I think, because we have our phones. So we're constantly on our phone and we're looking at our phone and not paying attention to our kids. So I try to make it a point, even if I'm on my phone, my kids come up to me and talk to me, I put the phone down and I look directly into their eyes and I talk to them. I listen to them. Obviously, sometimes if things have to be done, like bills being paid and we're caught up in the moment, I'm not always going to be perfect at that. But I think in the age of electronics, it's becoming more and more rare to just sit our kids in front of an electronic and not talk to them. Let the electronic do everything. So we have to be really careful with that. Um, but yeah, I can't stress enough just through even her studies, and she's shown me some of them, how um talking is so imperative. That's why you'll see like even in big families. Now, as you have more and more kids, you're going to notice that you don't have to be like so careful about like, oh, I have to be intentional about this. I have to be intentional about this. Because for my two babies, they've just been around people all the time and um if anyone knows Hannah, she has to be around us or she has to be around her siblings. She hates sleeping alone. My two younger kids hate sleeping alone, and it's because there's always been people with them. They love people. And Kelly, I mean, people that know her, she talks like a 15-year-old, when you're carrying a conversation with her. Hannah, she will tell you whole stories, you know. Um, and so it's just from picking up from their older siblings, talking to them all the time. They've never had like they're definitely not deprived of attention or love in our house because there's so many people to love on them. People are always giving them hugs. People are always telling them they love them. That's another thing that's so important. Affection, telling your kids you love them, hugging them all the time, kissing them, letting them know. Hannah and Kelly's favorite thing to do with me is to snuggle. I don't remember my older kids being that needy when it came to like soaking, but every day, like multiple times a day, they want to snuggle with me. That forces me to kind of slow down a little bit and sit and take a minute to kind of, cuddle with them and talk to them about their day and, whatever. But I think it's really cute that they want to snuggle with me all the time. So, um, Yeah, I would just try to, obviously, instruction is going to be like 50% of our time with our kids, right? But, just try to incorporate having fun with them, telling them a fun story, asking them about their day, asking them to tell you about something they did. It's asking them questions and having them answer you, I think is really important with younger kids. So it will pay off. All that work you're doing and all the talking you're doing will pay off. So, how about how can we enjoy our older children when it comes to relationships with the opposite sex? Because this can be a thorn in the flesh for many people, whether you have a girl that's boy crazy or you have a boy that's girl crazy. And, you're just like, no, it's too early for that. Well, definitely have some boundaries from the beginning, have some expectations and rules. For my children, they just knew it was an automatic. There's not going to be any like serious back and forth with anyone. And we've since enforced this rule, doubled down on this with Chloe and Down, is that there will be no relationships, no serious relationships until 18, because we don't feel like you should be in a relationship unless marriage is on the table, and marriage is not going to be on the table with a 14. Okay, some relationships are starting even earlier than that: 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 18 is about the earliest. So they don't need to be going steady, talking to someone, dating someone before they're 18. So definitely from the beginning, my sons always knew that. We would always just tell them that because we knew that they would be the main providers of whatever relationship they were in. So in their minds, they've always just know nothing till even after I'm out of high school, until it's a possibility for marriage to be on the table. It takes a lot of work to keep up with your kids' relationships. And moms, we normally know or have little inklings of when our kids are interested in someone. And, we're kind of the first ones to kind of pick up on that. Dads are kind of clueless in this department. That's why we're there to kind of be like, hey, did you notice that there's a little bit of interest here? Um, it takes work to keep up with your kids' relationships, but it will pay off. It takes work to chaperone, but it will pay off. And how is it going to pay off with chaperoning? And you're like, this is too much work. And I get it. I'm in the fullest season of my life right now. I've got a married son. I've got a son that's in a serious relationship. I've got, you know, an almost 20-year-old, and a 17-year-old. The 17-year-old, nothing's even there because she knows not till she's 18. Um, but there's all this stuff going on. And so I have to go chaperone, or I have to have one of the siblings. We allow like some of the older siblings to do it. We're fine with that. But it's still a lot of work to like get this person here or let this person do this, or it's a lot of work, but it's going to be worth it because first of all, you're going to know your future in-law children if they're over at your house a lot, or you're going with to do activities with them. You're going to get to know them. um the most important thing is that they're going to make it to the wedding altar pure, and that's one of our intentions when it comes to our dating children, right? And we're supposed to, as Christians, flee fornication. So if you're supposed to flee fornication, I'm not going to put my kids in a situation where they'll be tempted with fornication. And that would be anything like them spending the night at the significant other's house, even if they're in separate rooms. It's just not wise. So we don't allow that to go on. Um, just like Saturday night, Liz and her sister Gracie came over. That's the one that my son is talking to right now. And he spent the night at the church. That's just a rule. Him and Lana went over there for Friday and Saturday. They stayed at the house, but Liz went to went to one of her friends' homes. So just no overnights in the same house. It's not wise. No overnights under the same roof. It's not nice. It's not wise because then you've got that thought of temptation at 2, 3 in the morning. Everyone's sleeping and you can't sleep, and you know that your significant other is somewhere else in the house. It's not wise. So, not under the same roof. Your kids are going to make the marriage altar pure, and they're not going to have regrets with relationships that didn't work out. Not every relationship is going to work out, and that's fine. That's why you talk to someone. That's why you get to know someone. Um, if you are not pure physically in that relationship, then you're going to have major regrets if that ever ends up breaking up. And, there's different cycles of relationships. Sometimes at the beginning stages, you're thinking, this is going to go all the way. So then if you're thinking that in your head and there's no boundaries in your life, no chaperones to keep you from fleeing that fornication, well, we're going to get married. So why not do stuff? Then you're putting yourself into harm's way, into temptation's way. So it's just good because you're not going to have regrets with relationships that didn't work out. It teaches them self-control and waiting for the physical relationship. Teaches them self-control because they have to learn, even though I'm madly in love with this girl, we can't kiss, we can't, we're not going to make out, we're not going to put ourselves into a situation where it could potentially lead to fornication. So let them enjoy their teenage years. Datings and serious relationships come when they're ready for marriage. If I could tell anyone that with teen kids, I mean, obviously, you don't have to do everything the way the McMurtry family is doing it. It's working out well for us, but you don't have to do it that way. You don't have to do it that way. And if we ever need to adjust, we will. Every kid is different too. Every kid is different. Every kid's maturity level is different. Um, we were ready at 20. Looking back, I firmly believe we were both ready. We were both the firstborns. So that played into it, So we were both ready at 20. And then a little bit of growing up we had to do. We grew up together and we got adjusted to each other and learned to accommodate each other and, you know, different things like that. So, but it's going to pay off if you do all this stuff with dating. It's hard, but there is no greater joy than having your son walk you down the aisle and then seeing his face when his bride walks down, knowing that their first kiss was at the altar, knowing that the first time they ever did anything physical with a member of the opposite sex was on their wedding night after they were committed to each other. That is one of the greatest joys as a parent. And I want that for other parents of teens. And so you're not going to get that by having no guidelines in place, no boundaries in place. You're not going to get there. Um, if you just are like, well, you're 18, you're a man now, don't mess up. That's foolish because I would not put my husband, who's 43 and been married 23 years, into a situation where he was alone with a woman. That would be stupid. That's why, even for my husband and I, we have boundaries in place. We're not alone with a member of the opposite sex. He's never at the church with a member of the opposite sex, just him and her. Um, he's not going to go out for coffee with another woman. He's not going to go out to eat with another woman. So why would we throw our teenagers with raging hormones into that situation? It doesn't make sense. Um, so yeah, takes work, but you're going to reap what you sow when it comes to this area. How about staying home during their childhood? So it's hard work. It's hard work to stay home. Um, it's a lot of hard work. Most of the time, from the time they're born until about 6 or 7, you're going to be spent training them day in, day out. That's just the cold hard truth. Put aside some side things until they're older because your time will come. Okay. So, um, you know, especially if you grew up, let's say you grew up in a home where the mom was always working. Okay. Someone mentioned this to me the other day. You grew up in a home where the mom was always working. So, in your mind, a successful wife, a successful mom is one that has a job. Well, that's not always true, and that could totally be a direct lie. Try from Satan, actually trying to just discourage you, get you down. The Bible clearly outlines our role as women and our role as wives, and it's very apparent that our main place should be in the home, running the home, guiding the home. If you have outside things that are taking all of your focus off of your main thing, you might want to reevaluate, especially when they're younger. As they get older, you're going to find out that they're going to start branching off and doing their own things. And that's when you can start branching off and doing your own things too. Um, Put simple measures into place to make sure you don't go crazy because when they're really little, it's really tough. You know, you're constantly correcting, you're constantly training, you're constantly sleep deprived. It's really tough. So, definitely with littles, sleep train them. Sleep training is so important so that you get sleep because For me, and this is close to my heart because I'm a sleeper. I like getting my sleep. When I'm low on sleep, it affects me emotionally, mentally, physically, everything. So, sleep train them, get them on a good cycle. Most moms don't realize that even just sleep training your children gets them into a better sleep pattern. So naps beget sleep oftentimes. So when they're real little, you really need to have them on a daily nap, and then that's going to help them fall asleep better by 7 or 8. So and that just kind of keeps you sane because then you got a couple windows where you can stay up, not till 1 or 2 in the morning. That's one of I'm a night owl. You have 1 or 2 hours where you can stay up and chill and relax, and kind of that definitely helps mentally. But try to make time when they're little to keep yourself in shape slash eat healthy. I'm not talking about running a marathon. I'm not talking about running a half marathon. It could be a 20-minute workout. When I was younger, um, I used to do like this 20-minute DVDs. We didn't have streaming back then. So I would do this 20-minute DVD. And that really helped me feel better about myself. It gave me more energy. It definitely is helpful. If you can't get a babysitter, try to have a date night where you put the kids to bed early and, order in. We did that a lot. You can order in Chinese, sit there at the table, talk to each other. That kind of just keeps you sane when it comes to having lots of littles. A lot of time when you have lots of littles and they're not really even speaking very well yet, it's like therapeutic when your husband gets home at night because then you're just able to finally have an adult conversation and string together more words than go potty, eat now, take a nap, different things like that. So, and then don't compare your life to an older mom. Older moms have earned that. They have been in the trenches a long time too. And there were years that they didn't have any outside activities. They didn't have any side gigs. They didn't have anything like that going on. And they've earned that spot as their kids got older. So it takes decades sometimes. In fact, I was texting with one of my friends today, catching up with her, and she's in the midst of life. She's in her life right now is all littles, and she has several that are in difficult ages. And she's like, my husband and I joke that we're going to finally spend time together again when we're in the nursing home. And sometimes it feels that way. But I'm telling you, we're 23 years into this, and I finally feel like I'm able to enjoy my husband more than I ever have. Because when you have younger kids, you're just in survival mode. Like, especially if you work an outside job or, you're bustling here, bustling there. You got to get them to school. You got to make lunches. You got to do this. It's like tag team. Like, you do this, I'll do this. You do this. You run them to the doctor. You run them to soccer. You run them to. So you're just in survival mode and you barely see each other. But as they get older, they start driving, they start doing more for themselves. You're really able to finally spend a few hours a day with your husband, the one that you fell in love with, right? So hang in there. If you're having marriage problems with younger kids, hang in there. It's going to get better. Work on it, definitely, for your kids' sake. And then just realize that there's phases in life. And sometimes you're going to be in survival mode for 4, 5, 6 years. But hang in there. It's going to get better. And it's always worth it to work through problems and, make it through because the love at the end is so much deeper. And it takes time to build up that love and that trust and that commitment and, memories together and all these different things. So just hang in there. Um, Leads me to my next point. You're going to reap what you've sown if you have a solid relationship with their dad. This is so important. Show them how to navigate arguments without getting nasty. I'm not one of these people who thinks you should never argue in front of your kids. I feel like that's contributing to this fake social media, everything's perfect persona. I think it's okay for kids to see that life is a little messy sometimes, whether that comes to financial difficulties and bills. And, you know, um, I don't want my kids growing up thinking that like life is so easy for us and it's going to be that way for them. No, they see us struggle to make bills. They hear us talking about it. Um, they've seen us argue, but then they see that we resolve those things. We work through those things. So I'm not saying just have like a knockout, drag out fight in front of them, kicking holes in the ceiling, throwing things, yelling obscenities. That's wrong. Please don't do that. You don't want your home to be a war zone. But I'm talking about arguments where you disagree on something. I think it's good for them to see you work through it calmly, without name calling, without foul language, and seeing you resolve that. And oftentimes it comes in the way of I'm conceding, even though I might in my heart still think I'm correct. I'm conceding because as a wife, and I know this is unpopular, and as he is the husband, there has to be a leader in the home. And it needs to be him. And so even if I completely disagree with him, I'm going to concede because at the end of the day, whether or not he's right, he's the one making the decision. So that's just how we do it. And I do have opinions. Anyone that knows me knows I have opinions, but I also know how to concede. And I want peace first and foremost in my home. And it's so awkward. When you and your husband are arguing and fighting, it's so awkward. I hate that feeling. I just want to be at peace. I want to be at peace with him. I want my home to be peaceful. And um, thankfully, he's never been one that like yells or screams or throws things or puts me down or calls names. We don't call each other names. That just is non-existent in the McMurtry home. Um, but I think it's good for kids to see how to work through things, how to work through arguments and different things like that. So let them and remember that they are learning how to navigate relationships based off of what you do. I knew of a story where a girl entered marriage, and from the time they said I do, they fought nonstop. Come to find out, her home life was like that. Her parents fought all the time, and she just thought all marriages were like that. Like every marriage, we just fight constantly, nonstop. I nag him, he yells back, we fight, we call names. And it was really sad that that's in her mind, that's what marriage was. Marriage is work, but marriage should not be a battlefield every single second of the day. It's super rare. My husband and I did work through a lot the first 5 years of marriage. You have to. You're getting to know each other, you're getting to know personalities. Um, by about 10 years, you kind of figure out what ticks off the other person and you try to avoid that because why would I intentionally make someone mad? Why would I intentionally do something to upset another person? That's just being a good person is thinking of someone else and not trying to hurt them, not trying to make them upset, right? So by about 10 years, but now 23 years into it, it's very, very, very rare that we ever even have an argument. And even if we disagree, he's secure enough in his manhood where I can be like, I don't really agree with that. These are my thoughts. And he's not going to hit the roof. We're both secure in who we are, so we can talk things out like that. Um, but your kids are going to feel secure even as adults. They'll feel secure. Even when adults have parents that divorce, it's tough. Think about it. Now they have two different homes. Hmm. Okay, let me know if you guys lost me because it's looking like it's saying it's preparing live stream. Is it still going? Let me know if it's still going because it's saying it's preparing it. I don't know why it would be preparing it. Let me see. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so you can see me. It's doing really weird things right now. Now it's telling me I need to sign in and it says preparing live stream up on the top. So I don't know what's going on. Okay. Anyways, sorry. Okay. Everyone can still see and hear me. I don't know what's going on. You might lose me. So I'm going to try to get through this quickly. Okay. But yeah, it's hard even on adult children when their parents divorce. So definitely keep that in mind. And then last but not least, reaping what you've sown as far as church goes. Of course, I'm going to talk about this being a pastor's wife, right? But before I was a pastor's wife, I was also a Christian. And my whole life growing up, church has always been very, very important to me. So, what you do, your kids will usually do a little worse than you. Okay. So, you thought I was going to say what you do, your kids will do. Well, they'll actually do in excess. So, if you go to church a lot, they're going to go to church a lot. If you don't go to church a lot, they're not going to go to church a lot, basically. So if you are a Sunday morning only church member, they're most likely going to be going once a month or less. If you go once a month, your kids will most likely go every couple of months. If you go every few months, your kids will most likely show up for Christmas and Easter. That's just how it goes. But if you go every single service, Monday or Sunday school, Sunday morning, and Sunday school is important. My husband's been doing a series geared towards kids. So Sunday school is important. Sunday school, Sunday night, Sunday morning, Wednesday night. If you go all those services, chances are your kids will too. You know, if you go every time the doors are open, as far as like revival services, chances are they are going to go too. So show them how you serve joyfully. Sometimes it's hard to go to church. Show them how to put up with others in love. I'm talking about sometimes it's hard to go to church when you've had a tough day, when you're exhausted physically. This is me every single Wednesday night, by the way. I usually have a full day of teaching and then supper and then getting the kids ready for the one service. And sometimes you're thinking, this isn't worth it. My kid falls asleep during church anyways, but it's going to be worth it. Believe me, you're raising kids where going to church is just like second nature to them. And it feels weird if they miss church. That's how it is with mine. It shows them how to put up with others in love. Maybe someone's having a bad day and they snap at you, whatever, you know. Um, it shows them how to put up with people that are having bad days. It shows them faithfulness even during the hard times. Your back hurts, you don't feel good, you have a headache. Believe me, I've come to church with all of those. So someone left a comment. Christine did actually. She left a comment in the Gently Led Sisters Facebook group, and she was talking about how pray for her. She broke her ankle. I think it was ankle, right? Ankle or foot, leg, that region. She broke it, and she's been, kind of it's hard for her to go places and do things. So she's had to do a lot of sitting. But she said, my friend said something to me about how, look at the people in China that don't have regular church, regular service, and they go anyways, even at the thought of imprisonment, sometimes death, work camps. And then here we are in America and we got a hangnail that's bleeding, or we have a headache, or we just don't feel like it, or, it's going to cost us gas money, or whatever it is. What is that telling our kids? What is that showing our kids? So she said because of that, she thought of that and she wanted her kids to see her going to church, even with a broken foot or broken ankle, whatever it is. She wanted her kids to see her going even during the hard times. And I love that. I love that because I do think we need to show our kids that we are, there through thick and thin and there when it's hard and not just there when the sun is shining and, it's not windy. And I've heard every excuse in the book for not coming to church, guys. The thing is, where there's an excuse, you're going to find an excuse. Someone tells a story about, he says, I'm out of peanut butter because it's another excuse not to come to church. Well, I can't come to church because I'm out of peanut butter. So I had to go to the store to get peanut butter. And then that ran into, the time that church normally starts. So we can always have an excuse. So church is hard with littles. I'm not gonna it's not easy. Sometimes even still with Hannah, it's a wrestling match. And I'm like, this is so hard. When is this gonna get better? I've been doing this for 23 years now. It gets better. Soon they'll be sitting by themselves and listening and paying attention and all it's going to work out in the end. It'll be worth it. It'll definitely be worth it. And I want to leave you with this thought. There's nothing like seeing your kids serving the Lord, rejecting sin, and following in the life that you have trained them for. You're going to reap all of these things we talked about. You're going to reap it eventually. With planting a church, the verse that speaks the most to me when it comes to church planting, because we have seen it all, guys. I feel like it's been a never ending struggle since the day that we first started church. And it's going to continue to be. Obviously, we get rewards and we see fruit, and it's great at times and it's dry at other times. And we hit mountaintops and we hit valleys. But the verse about fainting not, that is the most Galatians 6, 9, and let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap, if we faint not. There's a condition on that. We're going to reap, but if we faint not, if we don't give up, if we don't just lay out and be, this is too hard, I'm too exhausted, I can't do it anymore. And believe me, there's been times as a mom where I'm like, what am I doing? I've like raised kids, and you would think I've never raised a kid in my life. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And there's overwhelming times. There's times when we feel like the worst mother ever. Am I giving my kids enough advice? Am I telling them enough? Am I instilling enough in their hearts? But this time of my life right now, it's the best time of my life I've ever had. I have all kids on all the spectrum as far as ages. I have 22 down to 3, and I'm getting to enjoy the fruits of raising them in church and having a good relationship with my husband, because now I'm seeing the relationships that they have, and I'm seeing Tommy and Jenna, and just how they didn't really even need to adjust that much to each other after they got married, because they both come from good, solid homes, and they had that foundation. And then just seeing them implement those things that they saw us doing into their own lives, there is no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. There's no greater joy. And I'm truly living in the best time of my life, and there is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel for you, those of you that have little kids. Keep going, don't faint. Just know that you are in a season. It's a tough season, but you can get through it. And I wish I had just had an older mom when I was in that season of life see me, because it was a struggle. It was a struggle having 3 kids in 3 years. It was a struggle. I wish she just would have told me, hang in there. Hang in there. It gets so good. Just hang in there. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great. Instead, I almost feel like there's a lot of judgmental moments, especially since I had a couple that were really strong willed or cried a lot. I felt judged for having kids that cried like kids do, um, in a lot of different situations. And as an older, going through that, I always determined as an older mom, I was not going to be that way. I was not going to be judgmental. I was going to remember how hard it was. I was going to remember the struggle. I was going to remember the mental turmoil sometimes that raising kids takes. And yeah, for all those insensitive people out there, we did choose this. But just because we chose it doesn't mean it's not hard. And sometimes the best things in life are the hardest things. So hang in there. You're doing great. I see you. I hear you. I feel you. I know the struggle, but I'm here as an older mom to tell you it gets better, and there is light at the end of the tunnel, and you're doing a great job. And no one can do a better job raising your kids than you are. So hang in there. You're doing great. So, anyways, with that being said, I'm going to let you guys go. I will see you next Monday. It should be. Have a happy 4th. We have big plans this week with our family. So it's going to be a fun week. I hope you have plans. I hope you have a great 4th. I hope you enjoy celebrating America's birthday. I'm happy to be an American. This is still the best country to live in. I don't care what anyone says. Best country by far. I would not want to move anywhere else. So have a great 4th, and we will see you guys next week.